Hey everyone, I'm Spider-Man 1991, and this is the video series I do where I talk about the comic books I read for this week. These comics came out May 7th, 2014. Let's get started with the DC comics I read. First off, Batman Eternal number 5. Pretty much this is what I think Batman Eternal is really trying to accomplish as a weekly series. It's not just going to be about Batman, it's going to be about the other supporting characters in Gotham City, and in this case, Red Robin is the focus of this issue. He decides to help out with the case of Commissioner Gordon being arrested, but instead of going after Carmine Falcone like Batman's doing, he's looking at the victims of the kids that were affected by Professor Pig right before Gordon shot that guy. And so Red Robin's investigations lead him to discovering that the kids weren't actually infected by any toxins, but they're actually infected with nanobots. And when he goes and observes one of the kids that's infected, suddenly the nanobots react, but he's able to obtain some control of them and make them dormant. But unfortunately, right when he gets the nanobots controlled, he runs into Harper Row, who met Vicky Vale, and suddenly the nanobots reactivate and they infect Harper's brother Cullen. And the last page of the issue reveals the creator of the nanobots to be one of actually Bruce Wayne's teacher, the old guy who taught him everything he knows about gadgets, who was featured in one of the 0-year backups. And that's pretty much the issue. Okay, this issue proves why I think Red Robin needs to have his own series. Okay, because he's a good detective, he can figure stuff out. I mean, and he has a strong fan base. So come on, DC, why not give Tim Drake his own series? If you're a Red Robin fan, I definitely recommend picking this issue up. And so far, Batman Eternal, I've been enjoying it. It's a great series. It comes out every week. It's going to come out every week for like the next year, so I'd say definitely buy it. Next up, Earth 2, number 23. Superman, who's on Earth 2, who's working for Cyclops now, finally meets Lois Lane, whose mind is inhabited in the body of the Red Tornado android. Lois is able to get Superman to calm down, and Superman takes her to Smallville, where he shows her Jonathan and Martha Kent at the Kent farm, and Jonathan and Martha are kind of like are pretty much hostages. Like they're pretty much I'm pretty sure they're aware of all the horrible stuff Clark has done, and I think they're just like acting calm and everything because they do not want to take him off. And it's really like just the look of things do not look good for the Superman of Earth 2, because just the way that Martha and John are reacting when he showed up was like they were just scared to death of him. And also Green Lantern shows up but with the hero side of things, Green Lantern returns and he saves Hawkgirl and Val the Kryptonian from being attacked by Superman's Parademon army, and he takes them back to the Batcave. But unfortunately, the Parademons figure out. Superman tells them where the Batcave is, and they attack. And fortunately, though, Batman is able to get everyone except Connor Hawke, who dies, and Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, who stay out of the Batcave in time before the Azrael Protocol activates, which is basically a self-destruct of the Batcave. Okay, Earth 2. If you're a fan of stories where Superman is evil, this is definitely something you should pick up. Also, Earth 2 in general, it's a pretty interesting series. I mean, it's a different look at the DCU. It has different characters, such as Alan Scott as Green Lantern and Jay Garrick as the Flash, and some very interesting stuff, such as in this case Lois Lane being the Red Tornado. So we still don't know exactly what made Superman align himself with Apocalypse. That's what I'm still curious about. Like, is this all mind control, or did Superman actually break and give into Darkseid's control? Like, what happened? Like, that's something I hope we get to soon. But overall, Earth 2 is an interesting series. If you're interested in a world where there's an evil Superman, I would say buy it. Otherwise, borrow it from a friend. Next up, Green Arrow number 31, the conclusion to the Outsiders story arc. Oliver Queen is able to track down Komodo, defeat him, and Oliver doesn't kill him. The person who takes the kill shot is actually his little half sister, Emiko, because of the way her father lied to her about, well, basically her entire life. And so, and while Oliver confronted Komodo, Katana is able, from Justice League of America, is able to defeat the Fist Clan and stop the Outsiders' bomb from going off. And right after she's done, she meets with Magus and the head of the Axe Clan and Shado and Amiko to find Oliver. And Magus pretty much says that now that Komodo's gone and the Fist Clan is taken care of, that now if Oliver will take the arrow totem, which is the green arrow thing, he can be the new leader of the Outsiders. And of course Oliver just breaks the arrow and says, "No, I'm not doing this," because Magus describes the Outsiders as pretty much being warriors that do good things outside of government, outside of everything. But Oliver doesn't roll like that. He says he would rather see justice than just kill people. And so he leaves. He asks Amiko if she wants to come with him, but she decides to stay and be with her mother. So Oliver decides to leave. So Oliver decides to head back to Seattle. And speaking of Seattle, last few pages, John Diggle, who's part of the New 52 continuity, goes to meet with the Clock King, but however, it turns out to be a setup, and Richard Dragon is there, who's pretty much now the new crime lord of Seattle, with a team of some of Green Arrow's rogues, some of which you might recognize, like Count Vertigo and Killer Moth, sorry. And when I say Killer Moth, I mean Green Arrow actually did face him back during a 0 year for that Batman tie-in issue. Anyways, Richard Dragon tells Diggle that he wants him to bring him Green Arrow now, and that's where the issue ends. And apparently this group, and the next story arc is teased to be Green Arrow versus the Longbow Hunter, so I think that's what Richard Dragon's going to be calling his little team there. Okay, so Outsiders. Overall, pretty interesting. Overall, this story arc was very interesting. It again helped sort of redefine the Green Arrow mythos for the New 52 by showing that Oliver's dad was actually alive the whole time, and he meant for Oliver to get on the island. So that was pretty interesting. And also, I like the way they drew Oliver's dad in this, about how much he looks like the pre-New 52 Oliver Queens. That was a pretty sweet bonus. And also the interesting development that Shado was his dad's girlfriend, and also that they had a kid together, and Oliver now has a half sister. So that's very interesting. And also this helped plant the seed that included Diggle in the New 52. So that was great. And now Oliver's going back to Seattle, and I cannot wait to see what happens when he has to deal with Richard Dragon and when he meets Diggle again, because I really hope that's going to be awesome. So yeah, if you're a fan of Arrow, the TV series, you should definitely be reading the Green Arrow comic book, because right now it's being written very similar to the Arrow TV series. So yeah, if you like Arrow, get Green Arrow the comic book. It's awesome. Alright, now it's time for Marvel with all new X Factor number 7. Pretty much X Factor goes to investigate the girl who's a daughter of an anti-mutator, and they pretty much investigate when Cypher notices she does this online webcast, and her father basically shoots the camera, and they decide to go investigate. When they get there, the girl says everything's fine, she doesn't want to go, and Cypher doesn't take no for an answer, but apparently when the girl touches Cypher, she somehow ages him to an almost decayed-like state. It looks like Cypher just aged 100 years. Well, actually, it looks like he just had the life sucked out of him. So don't know, and that's pretty much where the issue ends. This was a very interesting opening, but overall this issue was just about average. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like X Factor, I like Peter David as a writer, but so far this new story arc, it doesn't look like that it's going to be that exciting or noteworthy so far, but I don't know, I have hope for it, so I'd say that this issue is probably just to borrow it from a friend. Alright, next up, Amazing Spider-Man number 1.1. All the .1 issues for Amazing Spider-Man for the next few months are going to pretty much be a year one story for Spider-Man. It's pretty much going to go into more depth about what happened during Peter Parker's first year as Spider-Man. And this issue takes place between the events of Amazing Fantasy number 15 and Amazing Spider-Man number 1, the very first number 1, where, excuse me, Peter's still making money as Spider-Man, doing all these different TV appearances and stuff, and also, however, his work as Spider-Man is starting to reflect his schoolwork. He's showing up to class late, and fortunately, since this is still around the time of Uncle Ben's death, the principal is just like, he's probably grieving over his uncle, I should ask his aunt and make an appointment to see the school counselor, and Aunt May agrees. So now Peter has these mandatory school counseling meetings every Thursday now. So Peter goes, and then he attends one, and then this is something that happened very interesting. Well, we also get to see Peter, Spider-Man's last show as a performer, where what happened was Spidey's manager had this stunt planned where apparently they were going to shoot flaming buzzsaw discs at him. And interesting enough, the person who designed this stunt was Quentin Beck, who you comic book readers should know is going to be Mysterio later on. And so, unfortunately though, the stunt wasn't quite prepared. Spider-Man had no idea that the blades were real. Suddenly they started going out of control. Fortunately, Spider-Man's able to catch all of them and save the audience, but the network head's not too happy about it. They tell him that Spider-Man's never going to perform again. They don't get paid, and and the issue ends with J. Jonah Jameson writing his very first editorial about how Spider-Man is a menace. And also, this story arc that's being written by Dan Slott right now, it does introduce this new character who's named Clayton Cole, and he's been watching every single performance Spider-Man has done, and in the end, and he even designed web shooters that look like Spider-Man's, and in the end, he makes his own costume and says that now he's going to be the superhero known as Clash, and that's where the issue ends. Okay, Amazing Spider-Man number 1.1, it looks very interesting, I'll say that. It is a very interesting story where we actually get a more in-depth look about what happened in between the events of Amazing Fantasy number 15 and Amazing Spider-Man number 1, for instance. We get to see what actually caused J. Jonah Jameson to write his first editorial as Spider-Man. We also get to see a little more in details about some of the problems Peter had to deal with being Spider-Man early on, such as being late to class and people starting to notice and stuff like that. So I think it'd be always going back, although we get a lot of these stories, though, when a writer decides to go back to a hero's origins, kind of take a more in-depth look at it. Those can be either good or bad, but, Dan Slott, he's done good work on Spider-Man, so I think he could do a good job on this, and it looks very interesting, like I said, especially with this new character, Clash. I have no idea what's going to happen with him, but chances are he might either be a superhero fail at it, or he might might eventually become a supervillain. So that's a possibility. Overall, I would say Amazing Spider-Man number 1. You don't really need to get this to continue reading Amazing Spider-Man, but if you want some extra Spidey in your pull list, then I say get it. Alright, next up. This is a series I was not expecting to like. Cyclops number 1. This is the first issue of Cyclops going into outer space with his dad, Corsair, and the Starjammers. And pretty much the first issue, it opens up with Cyclops getting used to using his optic blasts in space. Then the Starjammers detect a Badoon ship. They get into a little outer space dogfight. Then Corsair takes Cyclops and his girlfriend, I have it written down here, Hepzibah, to go raid the ship, which they do. And right after they're done raiding it and they get the Badoon off, Corsair decides, you know what, this ship is big enough that it can be piloted by 2 people, so I'm going to take Scott with me and we can have our own little adventures. And so he tells Scott that that he and him are going to take this ship together and they're going to go see what the universe has to offer. And it was a great story. It really was. I like how Cyclops is written, like his inner thought blocks and stuff, because he sounds exactly like a teenager, because he's thinking to himself, like, originally when I was little, I wanted to be a pirate, a pilot, an astronaut. Now, apparently, now apparently it looks like I just wanted to be my dad. And so, no, it's a very nice issue. We also the way Greg Rucka writes Corsair, aka Christopher Summers, in this is also nice because he's actually making an effort. He wants to be a good father to Scott to make up for all the time that he missed, and it's nice. And so, and also if you, it's pretty cool, interesting seeing Cyclops bond with his dad. And if you don't like the way Cyclops is now, and I'm referring to the present day Uncanny X-Men red suit Cyclops. If you don't like that one, well, here's your chance to get back to classic Cyclops in a series that just focuses on him. But overall, this was a fantastic first issue. I love the way Greg Rucka writes both Scott and Christopher Summers. I'm not really a big fan of what they did with Cyclops post Avengers vs. X-Men, but I do like this younger Cyclops. I think this is a great series, and definitely, if you're not a fan of the present day Cyclops, then you should definitely give this a shot. I would definitely say Cyclops #1 is definitely a buy. All right, next up, Moon Knight #3. Moon Knight fights ghosts in this issue. That's how I can describe it. So basically Moon Knight fights some ghosts. After he realizes he can't actually touch them, the spirit or moon god in his head tells him that he has all these ancient Egyptian artifacts. I'm pretty sure something can help him fight the dead. So he looks into it. Then he returned to face the ghosts again. This time draped in some Egyptian armor and stuff, and he's able to do some damage until he finds the source of the trouble, and he's able to put the spirits to rest. And that's the issue. Now, it's interesting how Warren Ellis is doing Moon Knight, because it doesn't seem like we're building up to anything. It's just like, so far we've just got, the first couple of issues have just been like one and done stories, and I think that's great, and I like that format. It's kind of nice to have a break from, having comics build up to something. It's nice to have these stories that are just kind of like, one and done. This way you can tell people, like, give this issue a shot if you like it, and, they don't have to be too emotionally involved with the story arc. I could just give this issue to someone and say, like, hey, you should give Moon Knight a shot, and they'll probably pick up on it, which I think is great. I also like Moon Knight as a character. It's very interesting to see, and they also did kind of change Moon Knight in the first issue of this, where they established that he didn't have multiple personality disorder, but just some parasite in his brain, and apparently I think that's what might be the whole moon god that gave him his powers in the first place. So far this new Moon Knight series by Warren Ellis, it's great. A lot of the issues feel like one and done, and I think that's a nice break from the whole having to build up to something that most comic books do nowadays. So I would say Moon Knight is, if you haven't been reading Moon Knight, I would say get this issue and decide for yourself. So Moon Knight #3 is definitely a buy. Alright, next up, She-Hulk #4. After her last client, Christoph Vernon, was taken back to Latveria by Dr. Doom after he had just gained political asylum in America, Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, decides to get some legal advice on the matter from her colleague and fellow superhero, Matt Murdock, who she visits in San Francisco. So She-Hulk goes and talks to Matt about her situation and what happened, and Matt tells her, like, he was in something very, very similar when he had to represent the Black Cat, and ultimately he asks Jennifer, do you really want to do this for your client, or are you doing this for yourself? So after she has her discussion with Matt, She-Hulk heads to Latveria, and she go confront Dr. Doom. And when she confronts Dr. Doom, she tells him that the whole reason that his son is doing this is because he wants an opportunity to be his own person, and that he's not really raising someone to be a leader, he's just raising someone to bow. Because basically Doom's just keeping his son locked up in Latveria. He's not really making him do his own decisions. Then Christoph enters the conversation, and he tells her that basically the same thing, like, he wants to have a life of his own, and he really doesn't want to give up being the heir to the throne or anything, but he just wants to at least have the chance to build his own life. And so Doom decides to agree to that, and he decides to let She-Hulk leave Latveria, and Christoph can go as well. And you think that's the end of the story, but no, it isn't. back in She-Hulk's office in Brooklyn, Jennifer Walters calls in her friend Hellcat and discusses with her paralegal the thing that we saw since issue 1, the supposed blue file. It's some sort of lawsuit that was filed by a civilian against a group of superheroes that included her, White Wingfoot, Tigra, Shocker, but when She-Hulk discusses it with them, she says she has no memory of these events at all, and also she tried to look up the case, and even though this case said it was filed, she went and checked the state's office, and they have no record of it. So she has no idea what this is, but it just feels important to her, and so that's pretty much a teaser for what might happen next issue. Okay, so we got a little more information about the mysterious blue file that's going on in She-Hulk. Also, very interesting story about how she is able to stand up to Doctor Doom and get Kristoff to leave Latveria, which is nice. I gotta say, in this series, Charles Soule, he writes good dialogue. I like the dialogue in this series a lot. It was a great conversation between She-Hulk and Matt Murdock that just felt natural, like it was really more of two friends than just colleagues, which is nice. And I did like the comment at the end of their when just as She-Hulk is leaving, where they make a comment to each other like, man, it's surprising we never had to face each other in court. That would be a very interesting court case to see in the Marvel Universe. Matt Murdock versus Jennifer Walters in the courtroom, not in an actual street fight. I'd rather see those two fight in the courtroom before I see them fight on the streets. So yeah, She-Hulk, still a great series. Still has a lot of good writing. I really recommend everyone who hasn't read She-Hulk to give it a shot. Okay, and that's it for my comic review this week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. I'm Spider-Man 1991 saying see you later.